initiative on November's ballot. I've said I'm still undecided on how I'm going to vote, but I'm leaning heavily toward a yes. Today we bring you the other side. Dr. Jessica Spencer is Director of Advocacy for Vote No on 3, the group opposed to the legalization of recreational marijuana. Dr. Spencer, thanks for joining us. Appreciate the time.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
So yesterday I kind of played devil's advocate with Morgan Hill, the Yes on 3 group, and I want to do that with you in a moment. But let me start off with this, because I've repeatedly seen the claim that if it passes as the governor says, it's going to stink up our state, things like that. First of all, I think we smell pot and cigarettes all over the place to begin with already. The Yes on people say it's just not true because the legislature will be able to regulate the when and where, and there's even a move in the legislature to ban nearly all smoking in nearly all public places. So how does that argument still hold water?
Well, it still holds water because we're dealing with a constitutional amendment. And I think that's what your listeners need to know and need to understand is we're not talking about the legislative process, right? We're talking about a constitutional amendment. And if a yes vote happens and this is now enshrined in our state constitution, we are not able to legislate our way out of it. You have to legislate and put that implementing bill with the intent of the exact black and white language in the constitutional amendment, and it simply isn't in there. If they wanted to protect our right to not want to smell and to not want to be inundated with the malodorous smell of marijuana, they could have very simply just put in a sentence that said, and prohibit it from being used in public places, but they did not.
But doesn't the legislature regulate these things? I mean, the legislature did everything they could to fight medicinal marijuana and to put limits on that, even after Florida voters overwhelmingly voted in support of that. How is this different?
It's not different, and we did have to go through litigation because when communities and legislators try to limit or legislate their way out of the flaws in a constitutional amendment, they are violating individuals' constitutional rights at that time. And that causes litigation that we as taxpayers have to foot. We have to foot the bill for that.
Right. You're a physician. What about the idea that keeping it illegal continues the black market, making it dangerous to buy out there, legalizing it would allow for safer consumption due to regulation and better quality control?
Sure. I understand that sentiment. I've heard it numerous times. The difficulty with that is the data. The data shows in other states where we have legal recreational marijuana that the black market thrives. In fact, there's interviews with drug dealers or cartels, whatever you want to term them, where they say that we like it when recreational comes to our states because it actually causes our market to increase. They, as in individuals, are going to be looking for cheaper options. Cost is a driving factor. The black market actually thrives in states that have recreational marijuana use. It's just simply not a true statement.
The argument that we need to stop incarcerating people for simple marijuana possession?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that we do not want young people to be incarcerated or jailed for little offenses, right? But that statement simply isn't true either. If we're talking about decriminalization, that would have to mean that we have a criminal offense that is a current problem in our state, and it just simply isn't. We have 0 individuals incarcerated in the state of Florida for simple possession of marijuana. That is a false narrative, and it's been proven wrong by the data out of our Department of Corrections.
Couple more minutes here with the Director of Advocacy for the Vote No on 3, Dr. Jessica Spencer. The argument that, well, cigarettes are clearly much worse to our health. Alcohol causes a lot more car accidents. So why take away Americans' freedoms to smoke marijuana recreationally if they're an adult and choose to do so?
I get it, and I can understand the viewpoint of not being told what to do. I certainly don't like to be told what to do sometimes, but we can't compare apples and oranges either, right? I mean, we're talking about cigarettes, we're talking about nicotine, we're talking about alcohol, we're not talking about the actual issue, which is marijuana. We're talking about a highly potent, high THC products that will be they on the other side actually say it will triple our market, right? If you have already stated that we already smell it here, we already have that in our areas, right? We don't want any more of it. And they boast and brag that this will triple the market here. And it's not a good plan for Florida. This is not the way we do it. This is not the way we make laws. This is not the way that we should be as responsible, because if we want to take the tactic of, I should be able to do what I want, leave people alone, well, then we need to be responsible. And this amendment is not responsible. It's not written well. It's written poorly, and we need to vote no.
Yeah, one of my biggest concerns, and we talk about this quite a bit on the show, right? And I'm older than you are, from the sound of it. I remember.
Oh, I don't know.
I think so. You sound pretty young. But anyway, I remember.
Well, thank you.
I remember, in the '80s when I might have been in high school or college, something like that, and I may or may not have partaken in smoking a little weed at the time, going to the laser shows or concerts or whatever. The stuff back then is so different in potency than the stuff that people are getting today. It's so much stronger, isn't it?
And that's the biggest argument, from a substance use prevention professional standpoint, which is where I come from. I think that's one of my biggest things when I get out to educate people on marijuana, because I do think there's a large amount of us that think, no big deal, it's just pot, like no problem. Like you said, you smoked in the 80s or 90s, and I don't mean you, but you in general, or knew someone, right? But if we do go back and we look at what the potency of marijuana was then, and we recognize and acknowledge that people were getting high in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we're only talking about a percentage of THC anywhere between 1 and maybe 9%, okay? Now we are talking, and all you need to do is go online and look at it, the percentages of THC in these products in current day are anywhere between 70 to 90%.
Good Lord.
So people need to really think about, if people were getting high and they knew individuals that were getting high on that 1 to 9% THC, what in the heck is happening to our brains with 70 to 80 to 90% THC?
How can people even function with that? Because, let's say, quote unquote, I might have partaken back in the 80s. I just wanted to eat something and kind of chill out. How could you even function with that much THC?
That is a fair question that people need to think about when they're thinking about voting for this constitutional amendment.
And last thing for you, and this has been brought up again, how easy, or it seems to be exceedingly easy just to get a medicinal marijuana card, right? Anybody could go to these places, talk to the quote-unquote doctor on staff. I've got a hangnail that's really painful. Can I get a card? And seemingly, I've never done it, but you can get a card. So why is it that easy really to get one of these medicinal marijuana cards?
Well, I don't have one, but from the individuals that I do know that do have them, and I've had conversations with, it is incredibly easy, shockingly easy. And for those, there's also the thought process of, well, this is going to mess with my medical marijuana card or whatever. This amendment, if you vote no, will not disrupt the medical marijuana market. So for the individuals that need it or already have a medical marijuana card, if you vote no, which you should on this amendment, it will not impact the medical marijuana market.
Dr. Jessica Spencer, vote no, the director of advocacy for the Vote No on 3. Most of the polls right now show it getting over 60%, but we'll see what happens 62 days from now. Dr. Spencer, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, coming up next, we'll talk a little bit more about what is happening on Capitol Hill as Congress comes back from their recess. And